Look, real talk, you don't care about original content. You never did, and I'm about to explain why. But first, the impetus for this video. So yeah, Disney. You know the name, I know the name. Entertainment juggernaut that spearheads the corporatization of humanity's artistic achievements, but also gives us cute singing animals and great stories that make us cry. Love-hate kind of situation.
That's a little complicated.
Last summer, you complained about them ruining Star Wars with The Acolyte and then pivoted hard into forgetting they still own the property when you praised Skeleton Crew, just as I predicted you would, you filthy hypocrites. Aside from that, they also took your ire when you said everything in the MCU sucked after Endgame while casually ignoring the fact that these masterpieces exist. All this will be relevant later, I promise. I'm working on it! In 1937, they came up with the first ever animated feature-length film, at least the first ever made on American soil, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And no, I'm not going that far back in time just to pad out the video. That screenshot at the beginning is real. Horribly, painfully real. Because it is a remake of said film. Yes, because Disney couldn't keep away from Snow White for too much longer. Disney is, of course, famous for having the superb idea to do live-action remakes of their most iconic animated properties. We all know this. But I bet you didn't think it's been going on since the mid-1990s. Remember The Jungle Book? No, not that one. Nope, not even that one. That one. The one with pre-Game of Thrones Lena Headey, post-The Princess Bride Carrie Elwes, and pre-Defending Rolling John Cleese. You know, for a guy who spent the better part of the 70s in drag, you'd think he'd be a little more into the idea of trans people just kind of existing. But apparently not. Anyway, Jungle Book 94 was actually made fairly well and was fairly successful at the time. And it leaned a little more into the Rudyard Kipling original for inspiration, making for a final product that put the classic story of Mowgli in a fresh perspective, full of artistic possibilities we would never have thought possible if not for fresh eyes and a fresh way of thinking. So it seemed like a good idea to give the live-action treatment to a bunch of different movies. The trek to get there would be rather slow. 2 years after The Jungle Book, we got a live-action remake of 101 Dalmatians of all things, with Glenn Close bringing magnitude and theatricality to the role of Cruella de Vil long before Emma Stone ever got her shot. 4 years after that, it got a sequel, the creatively named 102 Dalmatians, with nothing else really going on except the gimmick of a Dalmatian puppy with no spots, a talking parrot, and a marketing campaign that was a massive fan of Parliament Funkadelic. Solid. After that, the idea of live-action remakes fell out of favor for about 10 years before macabre director extraordinaire and closet low-key racist Tim Burton gave us his take on Alice in Wonderland, providing, just as with The Jungle Book, a fresh take on the Disney version of the property. It wasn't quite as critically well-received as its animated namesake, but it made a killing at the box office and spawned a sequel that wasn't amazing. But Alice in Wonderland did more than just earn a sequel. It widened the path for more live-action adaptations. For good or ill, Maleficent re-examined Sleeping Beauty through the villain's point of view, doing so in such a good way it got its own sequel. Cinderella fleshed out the classic fairy tale for a modern era and became surprisingly successful. And The Jungle Book 2016 took more inspiration from the original Kipling stories and returned to its dark, lush roots that the animated movie would have had, making it insanely successful. Even all the movies that followed that many attribute to the downfall of the trend aren't all awful all the time. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King each have at least 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and made $1 billion each at the box office. I'm gonna circle back to that part, it'll be important later. And Christopher Robin, despite not being a remake so much as follow-up. Whatever. Critics liked it and it brought in the honey, that's all I'm getting at here. As you can plainly see, it wasn't always a horrible tragedy for Disney to take its classic animated properties and update them with modern technology and modern storytelling. The tragedy would come later. What is the point of all this? I hear you ask. Are you defending the Disney live-action remakes, you might also be asking? Of course not! In fact, people criticizing them have some good points. Some. calm your asses down. For starters, it is true that the only reason these remakes are being churned out nowadays without the same creative passion as before is so that Disney can hold on to the copyrights for each of these properties. You saw how long they spent trying to hang on to the copyright for Mickey Mouse, right? Dude is years into public domain territory, and Disney just refuses to let him go. They came out of that looking like Rocky after his fight with the Russian, and all they could really do was keep their greedy claws on the modern version of Mickey. The old school version that we saw in Steamboat Willie, however, is now very famously in the public domain. Honestly, I think Disney should have tried harder for that one.
It is a small world after all.
But that's a real talk for another time. So anyway, I'm not defending these remakes. I'm simply providing facts. Facts that tie into the opening statement of this video. Because for so many people who demand original content from Disney and other film studios instead of another sequel or remake, you don't seem to want to give the same incentive to make original content instead of more remakes or sequels. It's perfectly clear that the people bemoaning the lack of originality in Hollywood these days don't have nearly the support they think they have. And that's the biggest problem. They think that people want originality, and yet they can't seem to figure out why remakes keep getting made. I just went through the numbers. The reason is because remakes are in demand. I hate to tell you people this, but whether it was bad or not, enough people went to see The Lion King 2019 that prompted Disney to make a prequel for it. And enough people went to see that for Disney to make another one. What's that? You went to see Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Which is itself a sequel? To a movie that is also a sequel? To a film adaptation of a mediocre video game series? Really? Sticking it to Hollywood there, champ. Look, I get that you're frustrated. There are plenty of movies that aren't getting the same attention as The Lion King who deserve it just as much, if not more. But there are just as many people annoyed with the Sonic movies as there are those who don't want to hear from Disney anymore, and they have the exact same complaints that you have. They say they want originality in Hollywood, but what they really want is to not hear anymore about these popular brands that keep getting all this mass exposure. When a brand gets that level of attention, people either obsess with it and help perpetuate its ubiquitous nature, or they get sick of it after 3 days and build their personalities around despising it because they somehow think it makes them look cool to be publicly against something so popular. I call it the Frozen principle. For obvious reasons. Now, the reason these people aren't helping matters at all is really quite simple. And to illustrate my point, City of Ember, Cloud Atlas, Ender's Game, Jupiter Ascending, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, Ready Player One, Mortal Engines. 7 different sci-fi movies, all released between 2008 and 2018. Added together, their international box office intake is about $1,375 million. As we established in my Star Wars video, The Force Awakens is the highest-grossing film in America.
Back, demon, back!
The Force Awakens alone grossed over $2 billion. It took 7 movies over the course of 10 years to bring in only 2/3 of what The Force Awakens brought in. 7 movies, none of which received any more than a 75% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 2 of which were made by the Wachowskis. Yes, those Wachowskis. And none of which had any sequels. Well, actually, Ender's Game doesn't deserve a sequel because Orson Scott Card is a bigoted shitbag. But I digress. All 7 of these movies had one other thing in common. None of them were prequels, remakes, or additions to some other established film franchise. In fact, had they performed better, I imagine we'd have gotten sci-fi franchises that could give Star Wars a run for its money years before the Dune remake. And no, I did not include the new Dune movies for that very reason. The first movie is a remake. And as I understand it, a much-needed one. That is the power of branding. Established brands like Star Wars that have a powerful reputation and nothing to prove tend to win out in a market saturated with up-and-comers that no one really has any hope for. And we as humans instinctively crave the comfort of the familiar. So when there are that many unknowns in the wind, they need their big, huge, billion-dollar-making, laser-shooting, lightsaber-infested security blanket to make them feel better. Now I get that sci-fi is a different medium than animated family comedies, but I'll do you one better. Luca, Encanto, Turning Red, Strange World, and Elemental. All movies released within the past few years by Disney and/or Pixar that are neither sequels nor remakes. And I bet you've never heard of any of them. Well, you probably know about Encanto. Because even though the song told us not to, everyone's been talking about Bruno since the movie came out. As they should, because that song rocks. All hail Lin-Manuel Miranda. That's not even addressing the bigger elephant in the room. The argument that rests at the core of every complaint about remakes and sequels. The argument that every idea ever made should only ever be made once. If you want a true path to the destruction of media, art, and culture, it's not a lack of originality, it's a lack of effort. Yeah, these Disney remakes aren't exactly creatively enriching, but at least there's some effort there. Imagine if The Lion King was only ever done once. And by once, I mean once. No remakes, no sequels, no franchise potential of any kind. Think about it. No sequels means no Simba's Pride, one of the best direct-to-video Disney sequels ever made. No spin-offs means no Timon and Pumbaa series, which was for me what the Lion Guard series is for kids 25 years my junior. We also wouldn't have that. No adaptations means no CGI remake, but also means no Broadway-dominating stage play. It also probably means no Kimba the White Lion, but I don't know what, I'm not sure what whatever. All that shit goes flying out the window and into the ether if these arguments were ever implemented in earnest. And the way legacy media is being treated these days means that eventually, instead of having only one The Lion King anything, we will at some point have nothing related to The Lion King. Same goes for Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, The Jungle Book, and yes, even Snow White. Does it protect your precious little childhoods from being reasonably inconvenienced? Maybe. Thankfully, we'll never know. Because this also protects the well of artistic expression from drying up. No, obviously remakes don't lend themselves intrinsically to the idea of creativity. And no, not every remake is going to deliver the feel-good brain juice you got from the original. When you are But bad movies come with the territory of artistic expression, and this includes bad remakes. It happens! But you need to pull your 8-year-old self's ego out of the discussion and figure out that only ever doing any idea one time is dangerously stagnating and leads to the implosion of culture and the actual stunting of good ideas that you think remakes lead to. Your 8-year-old self needs a reality check anyway. Most of the stuff you think is so damn sacred wasn't that cool in the first place. Here's another thing I might do a real talk video on. If you know, you know. I know! Marvel first, I promised! In most cases, these movies needed remakes simply because of the changing times. Sure, Sleeping Beauty was a technological wonder when it first came out, but the standards of the era have drastically changed since then, since we've learned so much in the way of storytelling and film advancements. But also, and I think most importantly, because of the radical change in our cultural and socio-political atmosphere. Yeah, I'm gonna get woke again. Don't like it, go back to sleep. I don't need your shit. If you didn't want to hear this part, chances are you clicked off the video long before now, so it doesn't matter anyway. Cinderella is a fine film for its time. But I got a newsflash for you, fellas. Women aren't just damsels in distress anymore. Cinderella, as a character, is by no means proactive in solving her own problems. In fact, she has a whole song dedicated to how, if you just dream hard enough, it'll solve all your issues for you. Not safe, not realistic, and not healthy for real little girls out there in real abusive situations. That's why Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, is by most accounts a superior film. Yes, I said it. I defied the will of the people who only think a movie is good because old. Because Cinderella in this film is inherently a superior character. Instead of waiting around for the problem to sort itself out, she actually puts in work to take back the happily ever after that was stolen from her. No dreams, no songs, no fairy godmother, just her own good self. I guarantee you, if young girls had started with that message in 1950, it would be held in just as high regard as the first movie is today. And if the first movie had come out in 2007, it would be booed back into the dark ages where it belongs. Same thing applies to The Little Mermaid. If the remake had come out in '89, it would be just as beloved today as the original is now, while retaining a more proactive protagonist with better chemistry with her leading man. And if the original had come out in 2023, it wouldn't have been nearly as well received. Movies are often products of their time. It might be unfair, but remakes are often needed to dust off these movies with their antiquated sensibilities for a more era-appropriate story. Because deifying old stories and demanding nothing ever changes means that we, as a culture, as a civilization and as a species, will never change either. By now, you've probably noticed something that needs to be addressed. Why did I apply this argument to every single Disney property that ever got remade, except for Snow White? Despite it not only being in the title of the video, but also, as of this recording, not having even been released yet. Well, the reason for that is quite simple, really.
Because you're gonna do the exact same f***ing thing and we all know it.
You'll whine about lack of creativity when we all know that at the very least in the abstract, you don't give two shits about creativity. You'll piss and moan about the writing, which, as we all know, is your little dog whistle for people of color. Refer to my Star Wars video for that caveman bullshit. The movie will make a killing at the box office and get at least an average critic score, and the world will keep right on spinning. As a quick aside, in fairness, Disney has had a reputation of using identity politics as a shield from criticism. Hey Marvel, you recast T'Challa yet? No? Okay. In fact, movie studios in general have been known to hide the weaknesses of a movie beneath the virtue-signaling nature of fake feminism. I can't think of any right offhand, but you get the point. Now, that does not mean that every remake that changes its characters is doing so with the specific intention of staving off criticism of a bad product. Because, and this is certain to be absolutely devastating to some of you, not all movies with black and female leads are awful! The bigger name studios absolutely do it for the brownie points corporations can incorporate, but that doesn't automatically make the product garbage. So, to summarize my points, stop whining! Stop whining about remakes you won't even watch. Quit demanding originality that you don't even want at the end of the day. And try to keep an open mind about new spins on old movies. Just because most of them won't ever live up to your artificially overinflated standards doesn't mean we should just stop making movies altogether. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs doesn't even have the luxury of being as much of a timeless classic as The Lion King anyway. And I genuinely can't see how this movie's core concepts could possibly be updated for today's standards. So nothing of value will be lost when this comes out either way. Yeah, I said it. Snow White isn't that great. Like I said, standards have changed since then. Try changing yours. One more quick aside, as for the only Disney live-action remake I haven't touched upon yet, there are certain topics even I'm too nervous to touch. In any case, I'm glad that Disney is the only animated studio hopping up on the trend train of live-action remake. Oh, piss off, DreamWorks! Hey guys, this is James from Dollar Coin Audio. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to leave me a like. I really need a blessing from the algorithm gods here. Leave a comment for me. I love reading comments. Seriously, I do. And subscribe for more content in the future. And especially thanks for keeping an open mind about movies and pop culture in general. I mean, somebody needs to open the channel of discussion and challenge these kinds of ideas. If you want to see my other Real Talk videos, I've got the one for Star Wars that I mentioned here in this video. And if you want to see something completely different, this is a video that I really want to be the starter for my flagship series on this channel. It's called Zell. It's a visual novel series about a dystopian alternate universe where demons rule the world and humans are an abused minority, while one half-demon, half-human is set to violently change the power structure. It's really intense and really mature and deals with sensitive topics. So if you're into that kind of thing, give it a watch. I hope you like it. Episode 2 is coming soon. Thanks again, everybody. Take care of yourselves and have a good one.